here we're kicking off turn 4 in Assyrian Wars, and I finished my Tribune checks up here. You can see only one person's not paying Tribune. That's the or tribute. That's the Phoenicians. There's a marker there. There's so many options in the miners' diplomacy, or in the secret diplomacy phase, and you know, I feel like I picked options that were not as potent as, say, Assyria picking a couple of key places like Phoenicia and saying, yeah, I don't think I want those to be opposed to me. It's not that bad. I got a big army sitting near there, but maybe Phrygia would have been a good choice. Although, I got the Cimmerians, or Cimmerians, to do a good job on them. So I guess I was fairly safe from most of the miners, or from any of the miners that I could come up with, in terms of being able to punish any of them. And that's all you really need. You know, we're going to see Phoenicia go under pretty easily. And I guess we start things off with Egypt. Remember normally how I say bowmen are so useless. Well, in this case, the use of the Turncoats card, which stripped away a couple of key heavy units from the Assyrian force, and a humongous bow force. All of these units are firing missiles. I managed to wipe the Assyrians out without a problem. They couldn't sit in the city because there's no defense in the city. They weren't able to withdraw, and there weren't enough points for it to be a victory that's of any value, but we managed to kill a leader and get rid of a couple of their mercs and pretty much clear the way for the Egyptians to do a good number. They're low on points though, so I'm probably gonna stop here and regroup. I've spent a decent amount of cards on them actually at this point. 2 cards, and wow. After Egypt, we swing through, you know, the Babylonians building up their force, really. Got a big triple army there, but it's not that impressive. A little bit of doinking around between Phrygia and the Cimmerians here. The Cimmerians advancing back on the Phrygians because they're under control of the Assyrians. And one of their goals is keep that army weak as much as I can. The Phrygians, not the Cimmerians. And then the Scythians came out and got their asses handed to them up here by the main Assyrian army. Huge force of archers, pretty much turned back. But here I started a siege. I only did one round. One of the units moved in and did the siege. The other unit can't do that. And then, you know, we're going to have the Medes coming soon, but first come the Assyrians, and they will have a chance maybe to clear away all the Scythians out of there without too much effort, actually. Syria's big bill for the mercenaries had to be paid, which meant they didn't do a whole hell of a lot. Basically nothing. They spent a point on something, but I don't remember what. The Medes have gathered up all their forces and started an attack here, and we got the Scythians up here still, so you know, they kind of a two-pronged attack coming from there. There's going to be another attack coming from the Babylonians. Which side that's going to go, whether that's going to go in here where they can just capture these, because I've decided conquered territories are associated lands, whether or not, you know, that's kind of just making shit up, but hey, I'm the one playing the game, right? And I think it makes sense. So now we're back around to the start with Egypt here. Where we go. The Egyptians start things out by clearing out all of the territory owned by Assyria, sort of trans-Palestinian down here. Taking Petra and these cities here. Remember, I'm using this as more of an associated city now than the rules state that they're home country cities once you conquer something. I just don't buy that. I think associated makes more sense. They become a pawn in the conquest game. I have a problem though. I'm out of points, which is not really a big deal. I could bring Israel into the fight, but what I can't bring is Judah in easily. And the problem there is, this is a space in Judah. I can't traverse that without declaring war on Judah. I have one possible solution, which is these boats, which would be a slow process of transporting stuff, and that's probably what we're going to do, is try to, well, no, I don't have a port up here, so that might be difficult too. I could do an amphibious invasion or some such. Might be able to land in Samaria. I have to look at the rules there. I don't know if I could amphibiously invade my own territory, but yeah, I may have to go to war with Jerusalem and throw them into the Assyrian camp in order to reach up here to Megiddo and such not. Another alternative is to just start investing points into Jerusalem as well. Israel is kind of frightening to me. I don't really want to bring them into the war because there's a big Assyrian army and Israel will just fall. Hey, bonus, first time somebody started getting victory points, I think, for a lot of combat activity, capturing cities, etc., against the Assyrians. There might have been some elsewhere. Fortress here fell. It probably should have generated some points for the Scythians, but I don't think it did. I think it should have. I think I failed to do so because I don't see that having gone up. You can see Assyria is collapsing pretty much on every front coming across here. Of course, the Egyptians. We haven't done the Medes yet. They come after the Assyrians in the ordering, but nor the Scythians. They both have big forces that are going to be going right into the homeland itself. It's kind of funny because the beginning of the game, Assyria's got the biggest army, etc., and they're able to take advantage of that and knock people off one at a time. But the problem is, eventually it catches up with you, and you've got everybody able to fight you. It's kind of like Napoleonic situation, where Napoleon, is able to pick off Austria, at least in the 1805, version of things. Napoleon's able to pick off Austria, and then he's able to pick off Prussia and Russia. But eventually, everyone is at war with him. Well, that's what's happening here, and it kind of makes sense that you would, if you had that kind of mindset of the all against one with the deterioration of the one great power. Assyria seems like an even better example of that than the Napoleonic Wars. It's surprising how quickly, being able to throw your weight and just destroy someone in this felt so easy, and now it feels like Assyria is just so hosed. And it's not like they're particularly, they eliminated an opponent, but something bigger came in a sense. It was not what I expected when I looked at it. They've got people, refusing to pay tribute. That's going to be victory point penalties. Now the question, though, is, can 2 turns of everyone hitting them be enough to get their victory point, to get their own victory points up high enough to challenge the Assyrian huge quantity of points? And that looks kind of hopeless, but I don't know. This was surprising enough, and you can generate a lot of points off battle and captures and conquest and such. Part of the effect that we were seeing was that Assyria didn't get a turn last time. They were paying off their army. They got a turn this time, and they're a little bit more potent. Nothing tremendous. They moved here and then had to pay a lot to garrison the city they captured there. But they also managed to play a couple of alliance breaker cards off of the victory point that they gained there. They had to pay a decent amount for that too. You can see they picked up I forgot and grabbed the wrong place. They picked up Persia and Syria and added them to their alliance structure. Those are each worth a victory point. Those alliance breaker cards are just awesome when you get to use them on top of a victory, because you get to pay less and you get double the effect. And actually I'm owed 3 more points than I have. So, because I forgot about the doubled effect. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use one of those extra points to rebuild some of the units that I had damaged here. I actually had a potential garrison. Oh well, I didn't see him under there. But yeah, that's the real problem. This army is really not an army of conquest, but I do plan on marching into here. If I had, I have an extra point. Do I want to position myself down there? Nah, I'll keep myself open. This gives me the opportunity to maybe intercept or something, which might be more valuable. Anyway, we can see the Assyrians definitely are not completely neutered. Although Syria is not really a huge advantage for them. It may help them in forming up. They're attacking Tyre now and the Phoenicians. It may help them in forming up a defense against Egypt eventually. Navally, though, they're screwed, because the Tyrian navy would be the one that they would have liked on their side, not the Syrian navy. Ah, well. The Medes had to conduct a conquest of Persia. That got them actually a couple of victory points. That's one of the things, you bring a miner in, they're an easier target for victory points because they tend to have a capital, and obviously the Persians don't. But you get a point for conquest, you get a point for defeating their army. You get if they have cities that are of value, you get points for that. It's easier to face them is the big thing, though. The Assyrian armies are just so potent and so effective that you probably are giving the Assyrians victory points instead. But something like this, well, but this had to be handled. Otherwise, the Persians would have been a real thorn in the Medes' side. So they had to swing and take them out, and now they can move back against the Assyrians. Okay, you can't do an amphibious assault anywhere where there's not a port, so that becomes not an issue. I'm not going to be able to get into Israel easily that way. So I'm looking at the Egyptians here, and I think I'm going to be doing a naval action with them. They get 6 points base, plus 1 for this. And let's take a look at what, if any, cards they have. I've got the Aramean nomads. I can use them later to hire, I may use them now, to hire troops that I wouldn't be in normal position for, I think. Not sure. This, now I'm caught in the... Once I start throwing the naval rolls in any game, I don't know what the hell I'm doing at all, because it's almost always something that just gets added for me. And now the idea of not being connected, can I add troops with that? Because I've always tried to keep a supply line, but I don't know if I can get some kind of supply line navally. Hiring mercenaries. Sounds like you can just throw them in any area with a force, so that's kind of useful. So I'll be able to get them up there. That's about as far as I'll be able to do. Now, if I succeed against Syria here in fighting them fairly effectively, I might be able to cut my way down and get supplies out of Israel in general and get forces out of there. And presumably, maybe eventually take out Judah or something. I don't know. I guess I can't do this live because I've got to do too many other things before I actually start moving the boats. It may not even be this impulse that it happens because I don't have a whole hell of a lot of points. For most of the miners, the Phoenicians came up, built up a fleet, and destroyed the Syrian fleet with no problem. And they can't build here. If they built here, they could attack Syria, but that's probably going to be over pretty quickly, so this seemed like their best move. The Syrians themselves had very little to do. They basically have no production whatsoever. Actually, they have negative production. They had a card to play, which they healed they took some pillage losses because of the negative production. I think they built a mercenary down here to help themselves. Next jump over was to the Phrygians and Cimmerians, or Cimmerians. The Phrygians had nothing they can do. The Cimmerians came in and were able to win a battle and then a siege. Probably shouldn't have fought the external battle. That just gave another point to the Assyrians because the Cimmerians are on their track at alliance level. So they get points for them now. And I'm not quite ready to go for the Scythians yet. They're See, they have a problem because they don't have an army group. So they can't really advance and attack the Assyrian forces, which puts them in a kind of tricky position. Got an interesting one here. The Scythians swept down and grabbed an important fortress, and that actually is worth a victory point. But the Assyrians have a little play against that. This nomad settlers. A nomad tribe of one of your home areas settles there and disbands units worth 4 combat factors. Place an eco +1 marker in the area. Then the remaining nomads relocate to the next area outside the card player's home territory. That doesn't seem like something that's in conflict with the normal power rolls. So just because they are still nomads, so this is going to allow me to boot them out of there and probably rebuild that city as well. The Assyrians mostly drive the Scythians away. They've pretty much wiped out what's on the board right now, and they also successfully punished the Phoenicians. Now, the check can't possibly fail, the tribute check, because we took the city, the capital city. You know what? After having done that, though, I want to get my bonus. This is going to cost me something, but I have deportation. I'm going to take an economic penalty there and move it up to the center of Assyria as a bonus. I think I can't maintain the kind of sphere that I've had, so I'm going to probably take some significant losses on the last turn for tribute failures. We'll see. I've got this little island here that I've got control in Megiddo, but I don't know how likely I'm going to be able to hold that out against operations by Egypt up there. But we're kind of holding our own so far this turn. Okay, so now the Egyptians have their little fleet here, and I'm going to, I've pulled most of the troops out of here, out of the army group. I've taken their Pharaoh. He's got 6 units here. He's going to gather up on these ships. They can carry 2 each, and then it only costs 2 movement points. They're not at war with Phoenicia, so there's no problem there, so I spend those 2. And that transfers me here, and I can start attacking Quaquak, or whatever. It looks like a fairly quiet zone in Syria. Most of the fighting, Medians even are cutting across here. Most of the fighting centered right here. This force can of course come around and cause problems, or it could drive south. Now that I've split my Egyptian army, the Assyrians are in a lot stronger position to be able to maybe defeat me in detail. But I can spend movement to ferry more troops up north if need be, if that's where I see the more valid threat. Out of the tail end, Babylon's of course the most interesting, and they marched up here, and this is kind of curious. They killed the unit inside the city, but the city hasn't fallen yet, and I'm not quite sure what happens in that kind of situation. I think the city's neutral now, but the Babylonians can keep sieging it and try to take it, if they so desire. They could also just leave it, and maybe nobody would ever attack it again, thinking that it's one of the permanent 0-point cities at this point. And then really the only other interesting thing was, well, other than me finding, hey, what do I have the Phoenicians still on the board? I declared them out of the war. was the Cimmerians, who running away from the Assyrians came down here and had some trouble trying to fight this city. They're just trying to get, you know, some kind of base to live out of, because they've been chased out of whatever pseudo homeland they had. The Assyrians swung around and took a couple of cities, keeping connection with the Medes there. Basically, they could have come down and probably destroyed the Scythians, who are kind of an annoyance, but the Medes have a fair-sized army sitting in range of, you know, the really meaty and valuable Assyrian stuff, and I don't want that to fall. They're slow. For example, here they didn't take it in one turn. They're not like the Assyrians are at siege work, and the cities for Assyria are fairly good in terms of having a decent defensive structure. And then also this army came marching up and chased the Egyptians. Now, we're getting kind of this weird situation where Egypt may end up taking the Scythians under their wing or something like that, just to get some additional troop strength into their army and be able to be effective. That's not an Egyptian army, though, so that's kind of a problem. I'd have to dismantle this one. Egypt got caught on their siege and got pushed away, and that's kind of saving Syria's bacon, but maybe. I don't know. We can see whether or not this army wants to move into place by some means other. You know, they're blocked off here with Judah here. They could bring the boats back down and sail up and on land again, but then they'd be in range of the big Assyrian army and defeated in, you know, in detail in the separate parts that are present there. So not a lot of great options there. The Egyptian army as a whole is bigger. In fact, even this stack is probably a little bigger. I don't know, that thing's not too small. But the leadership for the Assyrians is still pretty good, even though they have this penalty that takes away their extra die. You know, it's not that huge a deal. They're still a pretty potent force compared to all of the other armies that are on the board. So if they turn their attention to someone, like they're doing with the Medes here, like they're doing with the Egyptians, they can probably knock them out. But where they're not able to pay attention, like the Babylonians down here who are scarfing up all the conquered territories, it's a little different game. Okay, Medea is doing kind of an interesting technique here. They finished up their siege here, succeeded in another siege here. I still have some points, so I may keep going, but I'm not leaving troops behind. In this case, I was able to steal and get rid of one of my minus economy markers, but I'm just taking the economic markers. I'm not actually going for a conquest here. Conquest of Assyria is pretty tough, and with the Assyrian army on my heels, it seems silly for me to weaken this force. Also, if I put it in the city itself, even if I recover the city, it's very easy for the Assyrians to defeat me, although I'll just go to the regroup box for the most part from that. Because they just have to overcome the siege defenses of the city, I can't really defend a powerful army inside a big city, or inside a weakened city, as it were. Even a big city is tough. I could do a lot of damage to the Assyrians as they attack, but you know, I wouldn't have my army where it is now, and it's kind of effective where it is. I'll continue on this route because I see some other valuable stuff to start grabbing, including the capital itself. What is our Nineveh's our capital now? Ashur was the capital, and they moved to Nineveh, I think. Okay, well, the Egyptians landed up here. They used the Pharaoh card to draw 2 more cards, and they got kind of some nice battle cards. So they decided to move up there. They got intercepted. The fight ended up a tie. The Assyrians don't have that big a force. I think they had the slightly better force, but the Egyptians have tied them there. Now that would go, I think, to the person who's going to win is the person with the more mobility, because they can declare themselves they get the defense bonus. So we've got 3 here versus 2 here. So I think the Assyrians are going to actually have lost this battle in the sense of having to fall back. The Egyptians had a veteran troops card, which would allow them to choose the side that's the winner in the combat. But I think this is how it works. Now let me make sure, because I don't remember if defense, I don't know, something. Oh no, normally it would go to a second round. Okay. Normally it would go to a second round of combat, but instead we're going to play this, which says we're going to get another round of combat. Now I've got to allocate the losses there, but the Assyrians, of course, have their own, which they can say, nah, we don't want this. At the end of a combat, another round of combat takes place. Regardless of the results, the Assyrians cost 2 additional hits. But I got countermeasures for that, which can be used in battle. And so far, nobody's spending any action points here. Gotta check to see if I have yeah, I knew I had a countermeasures, but it's not a battle countermeasures for the Assyrians. So they have actually lost the battle, even though they tried to do this. And I'll calculate that out. It's not going to be a huge 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It's just a 1 victory point battle. But the biggie is they get routed, and the Egyptians get to cancel their routes out to some extent as the victors, based on their leader rating. Past Egypt in the turn order here, or once we run between Egypt and Assyria, it's almost a vacuum of interesting stuff happening. So like Babylon, yeah, they took a territory, you know. Most of the others are doing nothing of anything value. Their cards are used up or whatever. The Cimmerians continuing to bop around, but they're just damaging Phrygia. And then the Scythians, well, they finally did something. They established another little home area. Well, another little area that they can kind of try to run an economy out of. And we'll see if they can expand from there. But there's a big danger with this army. They don't want to get too close to that, probably. So, plus they're out of cards now, so they're done as far as I can see. The Assyrians still feel like they're kind of struggling. They moved down here, wiped out the Scythians, no big deal there. Took Kish out at the same time, but everything and built up their fortresses again to keep themselves from getting conquered. The Medes can't spread out their forces to do that, but maybe some other troops could go walk in there and just take those empty cities. They didn't have the points to really, you know, fix this unit, and it's quite possible we might see an Egyptian combination to try to take that out. The Babylonians we can't do anything about. We're really having a hard time reacting and trying to hold ourselves together. And meanwhile, next turn looks uglier as the Babylonians start gathering, you know, points they're going to add to their income and taking away from ours. The Medes had another gathering of the tribes event earlier in the turn. There's really a sort of, you can feel the game snowballing against the Assyrians. And it's really kind of clever to take these things and then just leave them empty, because they return then to Assyrian control. The Assyrians rebuild them. They're not getting victory points off of reconquering them, which is fairly easy. But they really do need to hold on to them. They can't allow someone to just conquer all their territory without any challenge whatsoever. So that's kind of a bit of a problem. They're also going to have to worry about recovering, you know, these pillages that show up and the like. All right. I don't think I checked these Medes last turn. I'm going to make a roll. Yeah, I didn't have to pay for them. Continuing right along, the Egyptians pretty much frozen at this point. No more cards, no more value, whatever. Medes continue their depredations. They're sieging Nineveh right now, within range if the Assyrians want to hit it, which I'm sure they do. They need to knock that thing out. It's gathering too many points. They're already up to 17 victory points off of just, you know, part of it's because I don't know how to rate fortresses. So here where it states take fortress gives 3 victory points, but I think that's a level 4 city as well, and I'm kind of doing well, if it is a fortress, which I read as having these little symbols on it rather than the numeric value, again, we went into this before, if it satisfies either, I give it the big points, which can really suck if you leave a fortress very lightly defended. There's a possibility here for 2 players to kind of go to war and generate victory points for each other, no matter what, really. You can hold your own little war and just capture each other's cities and then rebuild them. Whether or not you have to rebuild them fully is kind of immaterial. Either way, players can kind of cheat the system. I'm not doing that, but you can see where that could happen. And then the Babylonians had finished off taking all the old Elam territory. Remember, this is worthless, and they're starting to repair it. They're gonna, you know, for example, they have to get rid of this pillage marker to make it worth owning, because otherwise they're taking some economic damage from holding that. Although with the city count that they're getting off that, they're getting quite a bit. But they also have to rebuild the walls. They did some further raiding, etc. And now we're on the Syrians. This is really the tail end where there's nothing going on. I don't think the Syrians have a chance because they don't produce points. One thing the Babylonians did do was they got the Phrygians as an ally. They, on taking one of these forts, they bumped their... they had an alliance breaker guard, got themselves 12 points from that, and then bumped it up into the alliance zone, just in order to, you know, give them an added force next turn, and something that can, as long as the Cimmerians or Cimmerians are here, it's not really that valuable because they can punish the Phrygians. But maybe something can be changed, you know. Who knows? The Assyrians launched an attack against the Median siege of Nineveh, and sad to say for them, they were defeated pretty badly. These are the losses here. Basically, there was, well, because of the rout effects can be negated by the winner. This is really what won the game, was or the turn, was the Medes were able to play that and deflect 2 losses. The Assyrians don't have the bloodbath card in their hand or anything else. They had 1 battle card in their hand. They didn't think they needed the Holy War. They certainly would have won with that. They opened things up by forcing, with a raids card, by forcing the Medes to take some attrition. That only was 1 hit. The archers did absolutely no good. Huge archery army, unable to have any effect. Would have been better to have light troops or whatever. Always an issue. And that's it for the Assyrians there. They're out of points for the turn and really can't rebuild their army because they spent points building up and launching the attack. The turn's beginning to wind down. The Egyptians drive the Assyrians back again. They got intercepted and managed to win another victory. And you can see they're taking some Syrian towns. However, the Assyrians found some aid in the Cimmerians. They're allied. The only reason I'm calling them at war is because with the Phrygians is because they're kicking around in Phrygian territory. If they get out of there, that war ends, I guess. And I'm funneling troops into the Assyrians. Now, the Assyrian commander here could actually command both units. So on his turn, he may or all the forces that are here. So on his turn, he may well dump the remainder of his force, of the lesser leader's forces here, send him off to go build up another army somewhere, and bring the rest of the Kimmerans in when I get a chance. That takes away some of my battle dice. I get those bonus dice off of each of the leaders of an army, but that's okay. And we're up on the Assyrians now, actually. The Assyrians use the Holy War card here and pretty much devastate the Median force. You can see that's what's left of it. The rest is down here. Forced back, they're allowed to retreat into an area where there's no enemy troops, even if they don't control it, if I recall correctly. I'll have to look up the retreat rules, see if that's the case. Anyway, I'll come back if it's not. That was it for the Assyrians, though. They spent their whole wad on building up the army that could do that, and then playing the card, etc. They're actually $2 in the negative from it. You can see the casualty effects, though, quite a significant one. That was worth 3 victory points, pumped them up to here. And it raised the siege here, which means I can take an additional unit. Archers suck so much when you're not conducting sieges, but I need, things to take hits on, basically. That retreat is allowable. They just had to take attrition. They lost 1 step on 1 unit that way. Yeah. I guess the next big thing is actually a combination of Assyrian moves. One is the Kimmerans launching against Egypt and moving through here using the Assyrian army group. As long as there are Assyrians in it, they can do that with, and Kimmerans. And then on the Assyrian turn, moving down here and basically destroying the Babylonian army group. Kind of importantly, they didn't move into Kish. They had a lot of points that they had to spend on rebuilding. You can see they haven't even rebuilt their fortresses. They're hoping to get some of them rebuilt next turn. The reason it's important, though, is that allows the Babylonian market card to be played, which is going to allow the Babylonians to get more trade points, and they've been kind of concentrating on that. And we got a little bit of a ways to get. Basically, as soon as the Babylonians play that last card, it's over. Nobody else has any cards available, but both the Medes and Egyptians have enough income that they're going to get a turn of some sort. The Egyptians aren't too far from getting Syria to surrender, actually, which is kind of interesting. When we come to the end of things after Babylon's turn, that's going to start the beginning of the turn at Elam, but they don't actually exist, so I guess with Phoenicia and the other miners. Egypt conquered Syria successfully, and I should remove Syrian stuff from the board somehow. I gotta take care of that, but I guess the big effect, they took Kadesh as a permanent occupation. Hey, it's been a long time, we wanted it. And the Babylonians followed up. Largely they played the Babylonian market and rebuilt all their fortifications there, however much the value that is. That provides a nice kind of defensive backfield that's going to be hard for anyone to do anything about, as long as they're in it. And they did some raiding by playing the Babylonian market. They'll get double trade, so they'll be coming into next turn with a lot of points. They also banked themselves 4 quick points to help out with that. So, of course, we have one last raiding operation there during the interphase that just kind of automatically triggers. But it looks like they're going to get the 3 points for trade. A lot of victory points here, though. That's 64. I don't see that as being able to be caught. These guys are at 19. So a lot of room to try to take the Assyrians down. But you can see that the flow of the game has kind of shifted so that it actually is plausible. You can kind of look at it and say, a little bit better play on the rebels or whatever. think I can kind of see where they might have been able to pull things off. But the Assyrians are damn tough. I think it takes a lot of understanding of the game, more than I currently have, and certainly a lot more than I had when I walked into it, to get a really good feel how to knock them down. I'm seeing hints of it, kind of trying to... On the other hand, I see things that I could have done well with the Assyrians, but of course I cheated with them in the very first turn, which certainly helped them out too, and kept them rolling a little longer. Right then, we're in the interface, and I'll take care of all that economic crap. I kind of jumped through everything before getting to the secret diplomacy phase. In particular, I did the end of interphase events. By the way, this is important. We can eliminate all powers. You don't have to have been conquered to be eliminated, which could mean a lot of victory points if Assyria is eliminated here. So their mercenary army has gotten a lot smaller. It's down to only costing them 12. Economics, they're in the same par as the Medians or the Babylonians. The Babylonian market with their trade value, this other Babylonian market, that increases their value greatly. Other powers look like they're a lot weaker overall. Card-wise, right now, nobody has too many. The Assyrians are up at their 10. These guys had they had to discard one. These guys had way too many. They had to discard 4 or 5 cards. I don't know what. They had to get down to 6. Now they're at 13 here, but I think they were at 12, which meant they had 11 cards. They had to get rid of like 5. Babylonians had 1 extra card, and that's all. And now I guess I do that silly secret diplomacy thing. It's not something I really enjoy doing because it's, you know, one of those things where it's kind of a pain in the ass solitaire to deal with. But that's where we are. Alliance-wise, everybody's staying in the anti-Assyrian camp. You know, the only chance anyone has is to knock Assyria down. But then the problem there is, well, the Babylonians are kind of kicking ass here in victory points. The Medes even more so. And these others who are weaker probably have just about no chance. But, you know, you got to make your choice one way or another. And they've got absolutely no chance. So if their goal is to win the game, they pretty much have no chance no matter what. If their goal is to place well, it gets more complicated. Because maybe they do better by being Assyria's buddy. Oh, the winner in the trade this time was the Babylonians. That's why their victory points got jumped up as high as they did. And the Assyrians got 2nd place. So, I mean, they're still cranking out pretty heavy. They're at 65 victory points. And everybody as a whole has to... Well, the first and last players have to do as well, I think, as the Assyrians. And then, well, the second and last. And then the second best player wins, you know? So it's kind of a, well, why are you particularly helping one or the other? Well, getting rid of Assyria seems like a good and noble cause overall. To mention one major thing, the Assyrians failed to get their king this turn, which means they're going to be fighting with a weaker force. Now, some of the other players, let's see, I think everybody else has one actually, a new king. Well, not the Scythians, of course. Babylonians have one as well, and they all succeeded, but the Assyrians have a hard time doing so, and that kind of makes this card suck. I cheated by playing this when I did. It should be only the turn 5 kings who it can possibly affect. Oh well, you know. But there's a good chance that king's not going to be in play, in which case I guess the military is more professional than if the king's in the field. I don't know. I don't know how much sense that makes, to tell you the truth. It seems to me if there's no king, you should have that effect too. And for the secret diplomacy, nearly everyone... By the way, a couple of things in the interface I didn't cover. I'll get back to them. Nearly everyone picked trade. Why? Well, trade is worth up to 3 victory points, but, you know, this is no big guarantee. Getting a card is probably more worthwhile, so I don't know. It just ended up a certain amount of balance. There was a certain desire for it that was probably inflated, but also the die rolls ended up that way. So what we end up with is Babylon gets away with a card for themselves. And the Scythians should have taken a card for themselves. They would have slipped under the radar. People just don't think about them. And then Assyria figured the Medians would be the biggest threat. Well, now I'm stuck with a stupid option, essentially. I think I'm allowed to create a revolt. And that's it. Because we didn't get... we were hoping to cancel out a red card, which is kind of goofy. Where the hell will I put a revolt? I mean, there's just nowhere... I'll put it back here. I'm not going to get back there, but it'll make... maybe it'll make them move a piece there or something. I don't know. Anyway, not a good response for that. Now, to the interface stuff, first of all, both the Cimmerians and Scythians ended up replenishing. So you have huge armies of each. Now, those are lousy Scythian leaders. The Cimmerians are over here, all in the same place they're at. It doesn't say where to replenish them, so whatever. I don't know. And Egypt and Babylon have piles of new mercenaries. They get double the mercenary pool, which the countermix really can't support. If all the miners are in the game and everything, the countermix wouldn't allow that. I think our last thing that we do is the army relocation. And there are no Elamites. It's on a per country basis. I'm trying to see who's in the war. I think Phrygia. I had to give a point to Babylon for Phrygia there, for being an ally. I think they're the first that'll be going. They don't have an army or an economy. Puts us to the Cimmerians. The Scythians are fine where they are, which means Assyria gets a chance to move its army. Now this is also an opportunity to scoop up troops. The problem is I kind of need to fight the Egyptians here. I need this army somewhere, but I don't necessarily want it near the Babylonians. So I'll shift it here. Oh, can't. That could be intercepted. I'll shift it up here a little bit. The Babylonians are going to take a little while to build up, but I got problems as Assyria, as you can see. I'm facing, well, the Scythians are the big problem right now, because the Medians were pretty much destroyed too, as well as the Babylonians. So there isn't a lot in the way of troops facing them. And I guess Medians could shift. They got nowhere to go. Egyptians. The problem for the Egyptians is they don't have friendly territory anywhere. They're landlocked and stuck at Kadesh. So they're not likely to move much. Move a leader for free, but he's actually just as well off here at Tanis. If if I end up building troops, it's easier to move them that way. And Babylon has basically no troops that they can free up. They need all of these in here. So, although I guess I could abandon some of those. They're not really worth anything anymore, right? I could create a new free state. Just take this guy, sweep through them all. I've got my economy already. I consider that really cheap. Okay. So I'm not going to take that move. And I think we're ready for game turn 5. And remember, everybody's eligible to be destroyed at this point. What does everybody mean? Only powers. Right? No. Eliminate, yeah, only powers. So let's send this one up.